Hey there, welcome back to PeopleSoft channel and to the third episode of PeopleSoft reporting using PSQuery. In this episode, we are going to explain the fields tab inside the Query Manager and see what are the functionality available in fields tab for reporting. So if you see, we have the Query Manager for PSQuery and we have this tab called Fields. Now this tab provides a variety of functionality for building our reports. For example, if we have to order the fields in a particular sequence in our query, or whether we want to apply the order by clause of SQL reporting to our fields. Similarly, if we want to change the field headers to make them more elaborate to the user, and some of the fields also contain translate values. So using Fields tab, we can do this functionality, and using Fields tab, we can also include the aggregate functions. So we have a couple of aggregate functions like the minimum, maximum, sum, count, etc. So all of these operations can be performed using Fields tab. So I hope you are excited to learn with me, and let's get started. So let's create a new query. And by default, in Fields tab, we do not have any field. So let's add a record, reposition header, and click on Add Record, and take some sample fields. For example, let us take business unit rec ID, rec date, origin, and the question status. So when you check one or more fields, and when you go to Fields tab, you can see all these fields selected. Now let me add one more record. Let's say we want to also add a requisition line record. Let's click on join record and let's apply a standard join. Click on add criteria. And now this is the B table. This is the second table, and let's select a couple of fields. Let's go with requisition line number. We already have business unit and rec ID in the first table, so let's not select them again. Let's add in process flag, process instance, item set ID, and item ID. Now, if we go to Fields tab, you can see the fields that we have added later. So now we have some of the fields selected from both the tables. So each time you create a new record in your query, it gets something called as alias. You can see E stands for requisition header and B stands for requisition line. This is very helpful when you are dealing with multiple records. Let's say you have 10 records, then you might get alias between A to J. So when you go to Fields tab and when you see a particular field, it becomes easy for you to understand that this field is coming from the B record, which is B, this one. And whereas this requisition status is coming from the A record, which is this one. So this is important. Now, let's say you want to change the sequence in which these fields appear. So if I click on run, I can see this is the sequence of fields in my report. And if someone says you that, I want to have the first column as the origin, so I need to move this origin column to the left. And the in process column, I want it at the last. And also the instance column at the last. So the changes which are expected as that origin should move to first here, and process and instance should move to last. So you can change the sequence of these fields using the Fields tab. So first thing is make sure that the required field is here in our list. Now let's click on this reorder or sort button. Now here you can edit the field ordering. That means you can change the sequence. Now I want to move this origin at the top, so I would write 1 here. 1 stands for the first field, so this is the sequence, new sequence I'm giving. Similarly, I want in process and process instance at the last. So the last 2 fields are 9 and 10. So I would say in process flag should be 9 and in process instance should be 10. Now, if I click on OK, you can verify that the origin has been moved to the top, and the process flag, in process flag, and process instance have been moved to the bottom as expected. So if you hit run, you would see your required fields ordered as per the user requirement. This is how you can order fields, and ordering is pretty common, especially you are dealing with multiple fields. Some of the reports might have 50 fields. So obviously you need to order them again and again to make the report more readable. Similarly, we can also sort the data by particular field value. And that is called as order by clause in SQL. For example, if we run the report, and if the user asks you that, just sort this data, I have 1176 rows of data. So sort them by requisition date. It should be sorted in ascending order. So the requisition which was created first, it will appear at the top. Right now, if you can see, it's just random, 2004, then 2000 and 2003. So it's always a good idea to sort your data with a particular order. So let's click on Fields tab, and we will use the same tab because this also allows for sorting. And now, instead of using this column at the left, for ordering the fields according to their value, we will use the right column, new order by. Now, right now, if you check on SQL, there is no order by clause here. This is just select from tables, condition, that's it. So we want to order them in ascending order by using the requisition date field. So let's go to sort and let's select the field, which is this one, and let's type 1. So why 1? Because this is our first order by criteria. If you don't know, we can have multiple order by criteria, such as first you sort ascending with the requisition date. Next, you sort ascending by business units. So these are the examples, and if some requisition has multiple lines, then there can also be a third criteria that after sorting by business unit, next you should sort with the requisition ID. So that is why we can have multiple numbers here for each field. But since this is our first order by criteria, we will just type 1 here, click on OK, and then let's click on Run. Now if you see, we have the requisition data sorted ascending order by the requisition date. So if you see, we have the initial data from 2000, and if we move ahead, we have the data from 2003, similarly 2005, so on and so forth. Now, what if the user asks you that, sort the data by descending order of requisition date so that he should be able to see the newest recent requisition at the top. So we will follow the same process here. We will go to sort button, and then of course we need to include 1 here because this is our first field in order by criteria. If I show you in the view SQL, you can see it says order by 5. So what is 5? 5 is nothing but the field number. Okay. Now, if we want to sort this by descending order, do you see this check boxes which says descending? So the only thing I need to change here is check this checkbox. So by default, the checkboxes are not checked. So our order is by ascending. But once you check this checkbox, it do the reverse. It sorts by descending order. So click on OK, click on View SQL. You can see the order by 5 descending has been added. Now, if I click on Run, you can see I have the latest requisition created in descending order. So that's how you can sort in ascending as well as descending. Now, let me go to Fields tab. And let's go to the sort. Let's remove this descending function. Let's click on OK. And let's click on Run. So now the user has requirement that sort this data in ascending order with requisition date as well as with business unit. So that first the sorting criteria should include requisition date, and then we have multiple business units. It should sort according to business unit as well. So how we can achieve this? We will go to Fields tab, click on the reorder sort. We have already sorted in ascending order by requisition date. The next criteria would be business unit. So since we have used one for requisition date, we will use the second criteria for business unit. Okay, that's how you can include multiple fields to order by for your SQL. So if someone also asks you to sort by item ID, you can just come here and type 3. So on and so forth, you can go adding more fields in your order by criteria. So let's click on OK and then click on View SQL. You can say order by first by field number 5, that is requisition date. Then next by field number 2, requisition unit, and then by item ID. So if you run, you will have your data ordered according to these three fields which you have provided. So the next requirement we have is changing the field headers. For example, this instance, instead of instance, we should have process instance here. Instead of item, we should have item ID. And then instead of status, we should have requisition status. So these are the requirements by the user, and giving accurate field names makes the report more readable. So in order to change the field headers, let's go to Fields tab. And first, we need to change the header for item ID. This is the item ID. You can see the heading text for this field, it's item. So let's click on edit, and then here we have multiple options for assigning header. So if we talk about the technical terms, then we can create fields in application designer, and when we create a field, it has a short name as well as long name. By default, if you see, item is the short name for your field, and if you take RFT long, then this would be long name for your item. So if you click on OK, you can see that we have the long name item ID here. What change we did? We changed it from short to long. And if you click on OK, if you click on the run, then you can see we have item ID as the updated field header. Similarly, let's go to this process instance field, and you can change it to long. You can see that this is as required. And if you click on the run, we have the process instance as long name. Similarly, let's change the header for status. Let's apply a long name. Click on OK, and this shows the requisition status as expected. Now, sometimes it may happen that changing the name of the field to from short to long may not give you the required or correct results. For example, if you see this field is called as line number, and the original heading text is line. So if we change it to long, it is showing line number as configured, but still it would be great that if this field said requisition line number instead of line number, right? So how can we add our custom heading text to the field? Well, let's click on edit, and this time you can see there is a option called as heading text where you can type your own text as you required. So in order to do that, first you need to select heading as text, then only it will pick the text that you write here. So let's type it as requisition line number. Let's click on OK. Let's click on run. And as you can see, this becomes more readable and more understandable that these fields are nothing but requisition line number. So that's how you can change the header for your fields. Now there is something called as translate values, and few fields supports translate values in the report. For example, if we click on run, check the status field, the requisition status, it has a value of O, A, maybe X, maybe C. So it becomes difficult for the end functional user to understand what does O, A, X, these values means. So for these fields, we have translate values configured. For example, O may stand for open, E may stand for approved, and we can include the translate values in our report. So if we click on fields, then if you click on edit, then for this requisition status field, we can see we have an option of translate values. And from here, we can configure. Now, it is not available for every field. For example, business unit, if we click on edit, there is no translate value option available. So how do you identify that which fields have translate values available? If you check this column, xlat, this stands for translate values. If you see only requisition status has some value present in the column, that means this field has translate value set up in your system, whereas other remaining fields does not have translate values available in the system. By default, it says n, that means we are not using translate values for this field. So if we click on edit and in the translate values, if we click on short, click on OK. Now you can see the n has now been changed to s. That means we are using the short translate value for your requisition status. So click on run, and as you can see, now we have the actual translate values rather than the single character for requisition status. And this makes the report more readable to the end user. Similarly, if you want to include long translate values, you can select long and then click on OK. You can see now we have L instead of S, and if you click on the run, you will have long translate values available. So for this specific case, usually short and long values are same for requisition status, but if you have any other field for which the long translate value is different from the shorter one, when you run the report, you will immediately see the difference. Now using the fields tab, you can also add the criteria here. For example, if we want to add a criteria for business unit, we may come here, we may click on add criteria, we may select the field from the first tables and then click on business unit and then enter the value. Now, this becomes a little more demanding task, especially when we have multiple tables, because we also need to correct the correct table and the correct field. But if you have to add criteria for any specific field, you can do it from here. So let's say we want to include only those requisitions who have a process instance of 0 in order to understand that these are the requisitions not yet processed by any process. So instead of going to criteria, selecting the table and doing that stuff, we can click on this funnel icon right in front of our field. So if we click on this field icon, then you can see it directly takes us to the edit criteria properties in which the correct field has been already selected. So now we just need to provide the required criteria and click on OK. And in this way, if you check the criteria tab, the criteria is added to our query. So if you hit run, you will get the data as per your criteria. Also, if a field is no longer required in a report, you can delete the field. For example, if this process instance field is no longer required, you can go to the fields tab and you can click on this minus button for your particular field. And then once it is removed from your query, you can run to make sure that this will no longer appear in our report. Now let's talk about the last topic for today, which is aggregate functions. So if you go to Fields tab and if you click on Edit, you can see we have a set of aggregate functions available, and by default it is none for each and every field. So if you are new to aggregate functions, you might think, what is aggregate? So aggregate functions is a way to provide a high-level view for your transactions, or in other words, it is a way to summarize your data and give you a high-level detail instead of giving you all the transactions. For example, if I see right now we have 1176 transactions, and it has data across all the transactions which is matching our criteria. But what if your director is interested not in seeing all the transactions, but he wants some summarized high-level data that, for this business unit and for this origin, what is the minimum amount of requisition and what is the maximum amount of requisitions? For this business unit and origin, what is the average amount of requisitions or how many requisitions are created in a particular year? So when you ask this kind of questions, you will not see all the transactions, rather you will see a summarized transactions. For example, for this unit and for this origin last year, 72 requisitions were created. So you are aggregating your transactions into single meaningful value. So this is called as aggregate, and now we will see a use case in which we need to perform this aggregate functions. For example, let's use the same use case which we discussed that. Let me show you how we can find the minimum value for amount, maximum requisition amount value, count value, and the requirement here is that this should be based upon your business unit and origin. That means I should have just one row for this unit and this origin, and I should see the aggregate values, and I should have this data across all the other business units. For example, you can see a couple of business units and origin here. So the first thing to do is identify which fields you want to use as a group by criteria. So as we discussed, we want to see this data for the business unit and for origin. So the first step should be remove all the other fields which are not required. So I will go to Fields tab. I will delete requisition ID, because if we include all the requisition ID, it would be all the transactions. So how would you get aggregate data, right? So let's remove requisition status, origin we need it, business unit again coming from table number 2, rec ID, line number, in process flag not required, item not required, and amount. So if we click on run now, I would see again the same number of transactions, 1176. So some requisition might have been created for this unit and this origin with this amount. Now I want unit and origin wise data. What is the minimum amount? What is the minimum merchandise amount requisition created? So how we can do this? Let's go to Fields tab. We have the merchandise amount field. Let's click on edit, and in the aggregate, let's select minimum. When you do that, before doing that, let me show you view SQL, and it's a simple SQL select statement from and joining criteria. But when you add an aggregate function, let's say minimum, I want to find the minimum merchandise amount. By default, the query manager adds a group by criteria on the remaining fields in your fields tab. So if you see, we have 3 fields. We want minimum of this, we did this. So on the remaining 2 fields, the group by criteria will be automatically added. That's why I said earlier that only include those fields for which you need group by. If you have 10 fields here, the group by criteria will be added to all the 10 fields apart from merchandise amount, and that may not give you the high level data. So click on View SQL, click on Run, and now you have the business unit wise data that, for this P unit and for this origin, this is the minimum amount. For this unit and for this origin, this is the minimum amount. Now, similarly, we have a couple of interesting functions. So instead of minimum, if I want maximum amount grouped by unit and origin, just change this to maximum. As you can see, I have changed to max. Click on Run and you have the maximum amount. These are aggregate functions. We are not looking at row level transactions. We are seeing at a high level transactions in a summarized function. That's why these are called aggregates. Similarly, click on Edit. If we want the average value, click on Run, and you can see these are the average, values for this unit and for this origin. So aggregate is a very nice way to summarize your data, and these are often required if you want to count how many requisitions were created. Uh, so this is the answer, and this is how you can obtain the data. Now let me show you one cool trick here. If your director wants to include minimum as well as maximum in the same report, how would you do that? Because at this time you can only include one of these, right? So you have minimum, you have selected. If you run, we have the minimum, but what if you want minimum and also maximum just besides this column? How you can do that on the same field? Well, you cannot do multiple things on the same field. What you can do is you need to re-include this table in your query, and then you can add the field and do the maximum. For example, this field is coming from a requisition line table. So let me go to record. Let me type requisition line. It is already there. Line. And then I will join the record. Even though it is already present, I am again including the fresh copy of requisition line. And then I am joining this with requisition header table. Click on add criteria. And if you see query, we have the table coming twice. Why? Because we need that merchandise amount twice in our report. Now let's select merchandise amount. And if we click on fee, we have this one coming from table B, requisition line, and this one coming from table C, which is also a requisition line. So this time, click on edit, click on max, click on OK, and then click on view SQL just to make sure everything is right, and click on run. So now you have both the min as well as max values for a business unit. So that's why these are called aggregate, because for someone like a director, it becomes very easy to check from high level what is happening in the organization. Similarly, if you want the count of requisition, you can again do the same step, add requisition line table, and then check the field, set the aggregate to count, and you will have count here. So that's how you can work with aggregate functions. So this concludes episode number 3. I hope this was helpful to you. If you think so, please help us by giving us a like, and I will see you again in next episode. Thank you.